Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm John Hamilton, the Mayor of Bloomington, and we're really glad you're with us. Those who are joining live, or if you're watching this later, thank you. We're going to be talking about the Bloomington Housing Authority today. We'll learn about what it is and what it does, and actually some really exciting and interesting new things that are going on at the Housing Authority. And I'm going to introduce in just a minute our friends here around the table. You know, one of the reasons I want to talk about this with you all today is how important affordable housing is in Bloomington. To make sure our community, which is a very expensive community to live in, make sure our community has strategies to, over the years to come, that we make sure we work for people from all walks of life, that this community welcomes everyone, which we do, but we have to make sure there are places for people to live, and that's not easy, and we work hard on it. And one thing many people probably don't know is that the Bloomington Housing Authority is the biggest provider of affordable housing in our community. And sometimes we're not all aware of what's going on. So today we're going to talk about that and some of the new things happening at the Housing Authority. So we have with us today, from my left, Sherry Clay. Sherry is the president of the Resident Council. For all the people who live and partners and people with Bloomington Housing Authority. Sherry, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Next to my right is Amber Skoby. Amber is the executive director of the Bloomington Housing Authority. She's an expert, that's good. She's here. And then there at the far right is William Hosea, who is the chairman of the board of the Bloomington Housing Authority. So we're going to chat today, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves a little bit more and kind of your relationship to the Housing Authority, and then we'll get into the meat of it. But William, why don't you lead off?
Well, like the mayor said, I'm William Hosea, chairman of the Board of Commissioners. I've been with the Housing Authority Board for about 7-8 years now, and recently assumed the chairmanship in February of this year.
Great, great.
I worked at the Housing Authority for 8 years, starting when I was a student at Indiana University.
Really?
A work-study program.
Nice.
Yep. And ended up really loving it and the work that the Housing Authority does. So worked for about 6 years as the assistant director, and then almost 2 years in the executive director role.
Did you know you wanted to be a housing director when you started as a student?
I had no idea what a housing authority was really all about. So. But it fit a lot of my passions, and just really enjoyed the work that we do.
Great, great. Sherry, how'd you come to be president of the Executive Council, and how you connected to?
Kind of just by fault. Nobody ran. Well, actually, there was one person that ran against me, and he never showed up to the meeting, so I got voted in.
You won an election.
Yeah. But I was raised in the neighborhood. My family moved there in '66. I was actually born in it when I was born. My parents lived in a shack on Lindbergh before the apartments were ever built. And then in '66 we moved there. My sister was born there. We lived there till I was in 3rd grade. Then we moved over to Oris. I lived there till I was in my 20s. Left for a few years, 20-some years. I came back almost 6 years ago now, and I've been there since and plan on staying.
So you're a Bloomer, right?
Yeah.
Like some of us.
I'm a Hellion.
Came
I'm a Hellion. I'm a original Hellion.
Yeah. Pigeon Hellion, you mean?
Right. And a lot of people don't know it as Crestmont. They know it as Pigeon Hill.
I thought you said Hellion for a minute.
Well, Hellions. That's our Facebook page name.
Okay.
A bunch of the kids that I grew up with started a page, and that's how we keep in touch with everybody who's moved on. So.
And the council, well, we'll get into that a little bit, but the Resident Council is a group that represents the interests.
Yeah, it's a group of, we have 5 officers. We meet in an executive session, I guess you would say, the 2nd Wednesday of the month. We plan events for the neighborhood. We get funding to fund our Green Bucket program, our Back to School Bash. We run a non-food pantry once a month. We also sponsor a weekly food pantry with Hoosier Hills Food Bank.
Nice, you guys are busy.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, so let's take a step back, and by the way, anybody who's on watching live or anytime, you can send in your questions, and we're happy to try to respond to those. But let's try to take kind of a high-level view and say, what is the Bloomington Housing Authority? How many people does it serve? What kind of properties? How does it work? How old is it? I don't know, maybe Amber or you or William or Sheriff, if you want to jump in. But just give us, like, pretend we don't know anything about it, okay?
Great. Well, our mission is we strengthen opportunity beginning but not ending with housing. Most of our funding comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So you can think of our role as really administering some programs for HUD. And the two biggest ones are our public housing program. So the Housing Authority owns and operates 312 units of low-income affordable public housing. And we have a maintenance department, property management staff, resident services, all those types of elements that make up our public housing program. And then our second biggest program, well, it is our biggest financially and by the numbers, but our second program is the Housing Choice Voucher. Some folks know it as the Section 8 program.
Okay.
So we have over 1,300 vouchers, and we support close to $9 million in housing assistance payments each year on the behalf of families. We help pay a portion of their rents to private landlords in Monroe County. So with the voucher program, we also have a supportive service program called the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which 80 families can sign up for, and it's a jobs program. We offer one-on-one case management to help those families increase their earned income and get on a stable path. So, hopefully they don't need the voucher assistance.
So you basically have, as I think about two things, you have buildings that you own and you run and you take care of, and 300 plus of those that people live in.
Yep.
And then you have 1,300. Basically, the vouchers are families that you certify or approve or whatever, who then you help make wherever they live affordable in private houses. So that's, how many people is that, do you think, at a given time that you're supporting?
So I would say it's around 2,500 to 3,000 Monroe County residents on a daily basis that we're
kids,
offering
families,
some support to.
individuals, the whole mix.
Yeah, adults, lots of kids live in some of the homes that receive financial support or direct housing from us.
Okay. And William, like the board, you meet regularly and oversee all this? Is this, anything good happens is up to her and bad is your fault, or how's it, we know?
That's usually how it works in my household too. But yeah, we meet once a month. Amber and her staff run the day-to-day operations, and I have to say that the Bloomington Housing Authority is one of the top performing housing authorities in the country.
I guess you're rated, aren't you?
Yeah.
They score you, kind of, that's right,
Yes.
and you score well.
Yes.
We score well, I think.
We do.
Yeah.
So they oversee day-to-day operations, and then we discuss all the goings on, any new initiatives. They back brief us every month on how things are going, and if we need to make any suggestions or sign resolutions, then we'll take care of that at our monthly meetings also.
Great.
Also the budget, he approves the budget. So I propose a budget and the board's responsible for making sure that we're spending the money wisely and we're good stewards of those federal funds.
And what's your annual budget, give or take?
About 12 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, we work really hard to help support affordable housing. We do a big project for us, maybe a 200 unit project that's affordable. We might have 100 units, we might do 10 units here, or 5 units here, or 7, or whatever. We've done about 600 bedrooms in the last 3 years, but you, at the Housing Authority, have 300 of your own, 312 plus 1,300 units. That's really the biggest effort going on now to support affordable housing in the city. So, and sometimes we don't think about that. So.
And we have vouchers for veterans also.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have 80 veteran vouchers, we call them BASH, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Vouchers, that we work with.
In addition, or is that?
That's in addition, well, that's
those-
part of that
that's
1,300 number,
okay,
yeah. But we
Yeah,
work really
great.
closely with our local VA officials to provide supportive services for those veterans.
So let me be just a little more general stuff. So how does it work for a family that's either in the buildings that you own or as a voucher? Like, do they pay some for rent? Do they, how does it work for them so that they qualify, and I assume some leave and go on to other things, but just explain that a little bit.
Sure. So to be eligible for our programs, they are based on income. So we use some income levels set by HUD. In general, the rule is 80% of the area median or below a family is eligible for public housing. If it's 50% of the area median income or below, they're eligible for the voucher program. And we have a document that lists these income levels on our website. It's a little hard to conceptualize.
Yeah. But so there's an income level,
so
and
there's
if you qualify,
first
you have to
Yeah.
apply, or?
Yeah, we have an application process. So usually our public housing 1, 2, and 3 bedroom application is always open. Folks can go to our website, bhaindiana.net, and apply to live in one of our public housing units. They have an application process. We take their basic information. We do a criminal background check. We verify their income, and if they're good, they're placed on a wait list.
Okay.
And then when we have a unit open, we call that family and let them know one's open, pay a deposit, and we try to move them in as quick as we can. And the rule for the rent payment is 30%. So 30% of that family's monthly income, they would pay towards rent.
So whatever that income is, if it's $100 a month or $1,000 a month that they have an income, 30% of that they pay the rent, and then the housing authority makes up the rest. Or
Yeah, well, we get subsidies, so we get operating subsidy, it's called, for public housing, that kind of makes up what that difference is, allows us as the housing authority to, run our programs and maintain the units. So yes, we collect the tenant rent, and then we get the operating subsidy from HUD. And for the voucher program, we do also have an application process and a wait list. Right now it's closed. When we opened that wait list up, we got, I think it was about 1,200 families applied, and now we still have about 900 families on that wait list.
So there's a lot more people who are seeking this than we have the ability to help,
So
which
we're
is not a surprise, but yes.
slowly working through that wait list and issuing the vouchers. It's the same general rule that a voucher family is going to find a unit to rent on the private market. They're going to pay 30% of their monthly income to their property owner or their landlord, and then the housing authority will make up the difference in what the rent is being asked.
So we got, as we close this section out a little bit, we did get a question from Diana. Thank you for sending in a question. Diana asks, how can we encourage more property managers or landlords to accept the voucher program? She's just asking maybe how many do. I don't know if we know that, but how do we encourage people to do that?
One thing we do is educating the voucher holders. So anyone that gets a voucher comes in for a briefing, and we talk to those folks about how you can talk to prospective landlords about the voucher program, and we give them brochures and materials that they can go ahead and directly give a property owner, and we've seen some good results from that. We've had folks call in and ask about our program and how they can join as a property owner for the voucher program. So our voucher staff, Daniel Harmon is our program manager. He's done a good job on redoing a lot of those brochures and outreach materials.
His parents are going to be so proud of you. Shout him out on this, Daniel.
He's great.
Okay.
And his entire staff, they do a good job of, trying to promote the benefits. But one good thing is we inspect each of the units that receive a voucher. So sometimes the landlords like an extra eye of detail to make sure the condition of the unit looks good. And also, as the tenant's living there, we'll inspect it at least every year. So some landlords find that as a benefit. Also, we always pay, so it's guaranteed income for our housing assistance portion on the landlord. Again, I mentioned close to $9 million in housing subsidy paid directly to these landlords every year. So
I won't go into that federal shutdown, which made you a little nervous. I know about that, but we're past that now, so we don't need to talk about it.
We made it.
We made it through that. So, so let's, unless there's anything anybody wants to add on that, just kind of basic picture. Yeah, please.
We also bring landlords and tenants together once a year, right? Do that landlord-tenant workshop where you educate the landlords about the benefits of utilizing Section 8
Yeah.
Housing Choice Voucher.
Voucher program. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we have an open house for landlords. We try to do that every year. Reach out through the Monroe County Apartment Association. And we also are promoting South Central Indiana Housing Opportunity. We're a sponsor for their Housing for Hoosiers, tenant and landlord workshops.
So let's talk a little bit about the kind of the challenges that lead to what we want to talk about, which is some innovation that you're doing now. So maybe you can give us a sense of the particular units, the ones that you own. There are 3 different complexes or areas. You can, how old they are, where they are in the city, so people have a sense of that. And then we're going to talk about, I know, some big plans for making that better.
Okay, cool.
Who wants to take that on? You want to
I'll
let
let
Amber?
Amber do it.
You're going to let Amber do it. All right.
Yeah.
We have 3 affordable housing communities. Crestmont, which was our first community, Sherry mentioned, kind of built in the 1960s. I think it was completed in 1968. That has
50 years ago plus.
Yeah, we'll just say 50
We'll
years
say
ago.
50 years ago. Okay.
That's 196 units, so it's quite a few units. And that is on the northwest side of our city.
Near
Tri
11th.
North Middle School,
Okay.
11th and Monroe.
Between
Western
11th and
Skateland.
17th and
Yeah.
Skateland, yeah.
If you
Okay.
play frisbee golf,
Yep.
it's the frisbee golf course.
Uh-huh.
And then immediately adjacent to Crestmont is Reverend Butler, and that was constructed in the 1970s.
Okay.
We have, let's see, 56 units in that community. And then Walnut Woods, which is on the south side of Bloomington, off of Miller. It's close to the utilities office. That was built in 1981, and we have 60 units there.
Okay. So you got units 50 years old, 40 years old, 30 plus years old, and I know you one of the things you have to do is keep those up, and you had a current plan, I guess I would say. Let's say the status quo plan was to do just a few of those a year, right? That you would rehab, because I know the city would sometimes use other federal dollars to help with that. But what was the kind of the pattern that you had over the last few years of that?
Over the last few years, well, I'll back up a little bit. In 2006, 2010, we took out a major bond and some energy performance contract money, and we were able to do a lot of aesthetic improvements with the exteriors. So all of those were updated, some site work. We did about maybe half of the interiors renovations for Crestmont, and a little bit in Reverend Butler, but it wasn't enough to do everything. But we did what we could with some of those financing sources. But you know, it's never enough, and throughout the years we've just been renovating one building, which is typically about 4 units every year with our capital fund dollars. So that's money that we get from HUD. And then we also pair that with the community development block grant funding.
Yeah. So 4
that
units,
the city does, so.
over 300 units, that means you get around to the next one after 75 years if you did
It
that.
would take us a long time,
to do that.
decades to do the renovations if we kept at this current pace.
The generation.
Yeah. So, and Sherry, you can jump in anytime too if you want about kind of how it is, you know, the living, what the conditions are like, what you think needs to be done. I know what we want to talk about in a way that kind of the new thing that's going on is the Housing Authority is looking at entering this new phase with the rental assistance demonstration, which is a fancy long name, but it's basically doing a major refinance that lets you rehabilitate these units a lot faster than you otherwise were going to do that. And that's kind of what I'd like to hear about, what it is and how you get into it. And you can all just jump in on that, and we'll try not to use too much jargon and acronyms and all that stuff. But just tell us how you're approaching it as opposed to that old style of doing 4 a year.
Okay. Well, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, or RAD, say RAD. Lots of acronyms in our world. It is a voluntary program that was created by Congress and HUD in 2012. And the idea is that it gives housing authorities this powerful tool to access financial resources, things like just loans and low-income housing tax credits, and the ability to get those dollars to do major renovations, but also to move the way that we're funded from a very unpredictable, unstable public housing operating subsidy program funding, which is like a roller coaster. You're never really sure if you're going to be funded well or not. We've been chronically underfunded for decades, and you might read news articles across the country about how public housing is deteriorating. That's because of chronic underinvestment from funding bills that Congress passes that just don't give the money that it takes to keep up these units. No matter how well you're being run as a housing authority, it's all about, like anyone's home, you have to make repairs and you have to do preventative maintenance, those types of things.
That's probably a whole topic we could go into in great length about the decline of federal support for affordable housing in the last 40 years probably. That has caused a huge backlog, I think, in the country, and we feel it here too, of just keeping up what we did. So you're kind of figuring out a different way. Congress created a different way. You're figuring out a different way. And so tell us what that
we can take the HUD funding that we get in public housing, but then convert it to funding through Housing Choice Voucher, what's called the Section 8 funding platform. Which,
okay, I'm starting to explode my head now.
so think of it as the resources that we get for public housing right now. We collect tenant rent, but we also get the operating subsidy from HUD, we get capital fund money from HUD, and all of that is bundled into this pot of money. And then we just convert that pot of money to funding under the Section 8 program. And there's a couple things happening right now. We've got some good funding based on the 2018 omnibus funding bill. And we have less debt on our property, and so financially it makes sense for us to make this move because we get that increase in funding locked in.
Oh, all right. So let me see if I can kind of try to figure. So right now you have 312 units that you own and you operate, and you have 1,300 units that you help families subsidize. And are you kind of turning all of the 300 that you own into a? I think you still own the land, but you're kind of turning more of it all into a whole voucher program.
More funded.
More funded.
Funded by the voucher program. And our current public housing units, after we convert them through this rental assistance demonstration program, the subsidy is called a project-based voucher. So that voucher is tied to the specific unit. So
they
it remains affordable, for a lifetime, and that subsidy remains with those units.
Okay. Well, Sherry, I don't know, have you guys gotten into this as a resident council or group, thinking about what it means, or?
We've had Amber's, had meetings to keep us informed on what's going on. From the most part that I hear, the residents are excited, especially the ones that live in Crestmont, where there's not been any renovations done since they opened. And just in general, the fact that, we're gonna get more energy efficient appliances. They're gonna maybe change some of the landscaping and the way that the neighborhood looks. Just bring it into the 21st century and give it the TLC that it's needed for a lot of years that the government won't let us have the money to do. So.
Okay. So this change, and I gather the board kind of has approved this, is that right, William, recently, or?
Well, last year.
Is it a multi-step? I don't know.
Last year we did a strategic planning session, and within that session we had to ask ourselves a question as to whether or not we wanted to move forward with this, because it is voluntary. So
it's a choice as a housing authority.
And keep in mind, this is not necessarily a good fit for all housing authorities. And so we assessed our situation, especially our financial profile. And we even hired consultants to help walk us through it. And we decided that this was a good time for us to move forward and go for RAD.
Okay. So
because if we do it now, there's not a whole lot of restrictions and that you have to do it. We felt like that doing it voluntarily was probably a good step, that it would give us maybe a little more leeway on some of the decisions that we were able to make as far as, changes to the neighborhood or whatever.
So what will it mean? How will it change? What are you going to be able to do with this new system as running the system, and then how might it change living in the housing authority system, I guess, or whatever? What are the big takeaways, changes?
Big takeaways. One is the financing piece. So having the ability to access some capital to do some major renovations. The next is more stability in our funding, so predictability, and then offering our residents housing choice as well through the voucher program.
So if you get this financing, does it mean you can do the renovations a lot more of them faster than you otherwise would? Is that the main difference for?
Yeah, we are going to do this in 2 phases. So our first phase is right now, starting with Reverend Butler in Walnut Woods, and then next year we'll start on Crestmont. But
you do all the units. You're doing all the units.
Doing everything.
Woo.
Yep.
Okay.
We start with a lot of pre-development activities, then we get our financing together, and then we start construction. So for both phases, we're predicting, maybe 4 to 5 years for doing everything.
So as I hear that, it means you're going to be able to rehabilitate or renovate all 300 plus units in 4 or 5 years, as opposed to what was going to be a decades-long project to get to them, which is a huge improvement, it seems like. And what kind of renovations are they? Like what will happen to a given unit? How will it be changed?
So I just have the details for well, not even details, I just know generally what we're doing for first phase. We're looking to spend between $40,000 to $45,000 a unit in renovations, and really what that is major systems like roof repair, replacement, our energy efficiency upgrades, heating, cooling, flooring, kitchens and baths,
Lighting.
Accessibility, safety features, lighting, site lighting. Those are kind of the big items that we're looking at.
We're not adding square footage generally to things, not making a new room here or there. It's mostly upgrading what you have.
Well, there is the chance to make our units more fitting for the need. So we have a lot of folks who want 1 bedrooms. Our wait list for 1 bedrooms is pretty long. We've thought about converting some of the 2-bedroom units to 1-bedroom units with accessibility features, and so here's our chance to make sure that our housing fits our need, and so that could be reconfiguring some bedrooms here and there, but in general we have 312 units, and we will have 312 units in 5 years, and maybe even adding some more units.
That's our hope, is down the road to be able to add more units.
Because there are people waiting for them.
Right.
So, Sherry, from your perspective, does the resident council weigh in on what you think is most important to be done, or do you develop a list of
we have a big wish list that we've had for going on.
A wish list of
excuse me, that we've had since we started talking about this. Just like things we'd like to see in the apartments, like different flooring. Maybe garbage disposals, dishwashers, better, accessibility. Some of the apartments have steps. We have seniors who can't navigate the steps into their apartment very well. So they're going to do some ramps. And then the resident council has a big wish list of things we'd like to see. I put it on there to expand our community building, to be able to have it more accessible to the neighborhood, and to be able to bring some agencies on site, which we already are doing now. Once every other week, it's folks from SCAP to come in and sign people up for health care. That's the community action program that they do. And then the other Fridays, WIC comes in.
Women, infant, and children program.
Right, and they do the checkups. They of the mother and the child. They load their cards with their benefits, everything right there. So we're starting to bring a few more programs to the neighborhood for the people who have transportation barriers, which that's a big thing in our neighborhood. A lot of people can't, don't have the access to a car. That's an easy word to say for you, but they don't have a vehicle, or the bus is a barrier. It only costs $1, but you know, if you don't have very much money and, you know, it's like, what's the
Yeah.
priority here?
Yeah.
Do I take my kid to the doctor or do I go buy food or whatever, you know, so.
Yeah.
We're trying to make things a little easier on folks.
And do you, does the council work with, I don't know if it's the contractors or your management team looking at that wish list and trying to see what can be done and can't be done? I mean, I'm sure not everything can be done that we want, but is that a joint effort?
Yeah, we have a resident advisory board, resident council, even our own maintenance department tells us, you know, what they're seeing out on site that they're constantly fixing or preventative maintenance issues that they're seeing. So yeah, it's just a lot of input and paying attention to, you know, our own staff, but also folks living in the units, resident council, for those community space upgrades. We have an architect working on the scope of work and the designs for the units, so it's all coming together right now.
Okay, busy time. Go ahead if you had something.
It's going to really, we're really going to crank it up as we move through this year. Closing on a loan and breaking ground for construction.
And you'll start in the 2 Reverend Butler and Walnut Woods, and then when does the Crestmont effort begin, kind of the rehab effort for that begin, do you know yet? Or?
So we'll start on pre-development activities early 2020, and so that's kind of just a year behind what we're doing now.
All right.
Can I throw something in there?
Please.
I was having a conversation with a person a couple of weeks ago explaining this whole RAD thing. And it dawned on me, this person thought that the renovations were going towards privately owned homes that receive vouchers. And they had to explain, no, it doesn't work like that.
We don't pay for that.
Right. So just want to put that out
That's
there.
a good point. This is the 312 that the Housing Authority owns. Let me just back up a minute too, and maybe I should have asked, what do you think that are there misperceptions or preconceptions that people have about public housing, how they operate, who's living there, what's going on day to day, you know, compared to what you see happening? I mean, it might be interesting for people just to hear how you think it is, who lives there and how they do and what's going on.
I think the biggest misconception is about the residents, the people who live there. You know, being able to distinguish between someone who just had a rough start in life or had a setback, maybe financial
Or domestic
problems.
violence situation.
Yeah. You know, bankruptcy due to medical bills or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people end up needing those services. And you just can't prejudge them like that. But at the end of the day, everybody who lives in public housing wants the same thing that everybody else wants. A decent place to live,
safe
something
place.
that's affordable, something safe.
People leaving to go to work, kids
Right.
going to school.
Right.
There's people that work all shifts in our neighborhood.
Is
You know,
that
I
right?
have neighbors that work night shift. I have neighbors that work day shift. I have neighbors who are elderly. You know, I have neighbors that have kids, some don't.
Yeah.
Some have their grandkids a lot, you know. I mean, and I think a lot of people perceive people who live in housing as they deserve to be there because they're not smart enough to do a budget. They're not smart enough to pay their bills or to get an education to move on. Well, I know people who are single mothers that are students who are working their butts off at 2 jobs plus going to school, taking care of their kids, trying to get it better. I know families who have, since I've been back, that have gotten in the Habitat program. They've done, you know, they've moved on and they're doing well. You know, and I know people who have left, tried it on their own and had another setback and have had to come back. You know, I mean, like William said, at the end of the day, anybody that lives in housing wants the same thing that everybody else does. We want a safe place to live. We want to know that, you know, we have a roof over our head. We have, our rent is paid. Our utilities are paid. We can take care of our families and know that we don't have to worry about, oh, my rent's $900 this month. My light bill's $600. How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay all this? So, you know, we're just the same as everybody else. We have a heart like everyone else.
Yeah. I think it's powerful to remember that yes, there's so many people in our community who have a setback or an issue that comes up, and it's important to know that Bloomington Housing Authority is helping 2,500 people, give or take, get that step back up to try to make sure we have safe housing. It's important to know that there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are on wait lists who are looking for that help, who need that help. And I assume every year you have people who come in and come out of public housing. I assume.
Yeah.
You know, lots.
Sometimes it's just a stepping stone on to the next thing.
Yeah. So this change of being able to accelerate the renovation is a big deal.
It is.
And it's a big step for you guys, complicated, changing your organizational structure and all, and do training. You have to get trained up on various things. How many staff do you have anyway, roughly?
We have 30 full-time staff. We usually have an intern from the SPIA program.
Is that where you started?
Yep.
Okay, you gotta hire them carefully then, because they might take your
Corps.
job someday.
Yeah. Shout out to the SPIA Service Corps fellows.
Okay.
So.
Nice.
And then we have a part-time employee as well, so about 30.
Okay.
But lots of training, so this opportunity, one of the financing sources is the low-income housing tax credit program, so our staff is going to training on how to do the compliance with the tax credits. I mentioned the project-based vouchers, training on that. It's a little bit of a different way to do your budgets and financing. Yeah.
The commissioners even receive training too, so.
Yeah, and are you one of the, you're on the board, right?
Right.
As not just the
I'm
resident
a
council board, but
resident.
you're the
I'm on-
representative of.
I'm on the Board
So
of
you-
Commissioners for Public Housing. I represent the residents.
Yeah, great. So, okay, so if you're gonna be accelerating the rehabilitation, if you're speeding up the renovation, what happens to the people whose apartments are getting renovated?
Good
At the
question.
time they're there? Have they talked to you about that?
Oh,
Seriously?
yeah.
Has that been an issue?
Every day, some of them are like, I'm not leaving my apartment. They can work around me, and I better get to go back to my apartment. And
The
I'm
same
like,
one, huh?
Right, yeah. And you have that choice when this is all said and done.
Yeah,
If you want to move back to your unit, or if you want to move to another unit,
okay.
yeah.
So you've thought about this?
Yeah, one of the protections that HUD says we must do under this program is if we are relocating tenants, that they have the option to move back to the same property. So that's a must do, and we follow that. But yeah, I get it's really stressful for residents when you talk about maybe having to temporarily move them and relocate them. But the Housing Authority incurs the cost for relocating those families. We'll find another unit for them to move into.
So how's that going to work? How many units at a time, and where will people go? What are you going to do? Or do you know?
We don't know the specifics yet,
exactly.
but we'll phase how we do the renovations, and some of them might be fairly light that we won't even have to move the families out. We might be able to do the rehab work while the family's living there, but others, yeah, we'll have to relocate and move back and have a whole relocation plan and lots of resident meetings about that plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But we do that already with the units that we renovate from year to year, so we're somewhat familiar with relocating residents.
Okay. We got another question. Thank you, Diana. Here, I'll read it to you, and you decide who answers it. I don't know how to answer this. Diana asks, will there be any changes for the individuals currently on the Housing Choice Voucher program? Does RAD, will it cause them to have any changes?
So we have 1,284 regular Section 8 vouchers, and after our RAD conversion, we'll have 1,284 regular Section 8 vouchers, and then we'll have these additional 312 project-based vouchers. So it's really not impacting our
They won't
regular
see a
voucher
difference
program
really,
very much.
Okay.
No, we'll be getting our subsidy from HUD, and we'll, hopefully we'll see very little change for regular voucher holders.
Okay. So let's see. We've talked about the cost. I don't know if there's any visuals that you want to share with us about this that'll help explain. If not, we're good. I know one thing you're doing, and the city's been working on this kind of more creative financial platform of community development financial institutions, which is a whole other acronym and world, but it's basically a bunch of regional and national finance partners who we've been attracting to the city to help do things like affordable housing and daycare centers and even small business. And I think, I understand, Amber, that you're talking to some of them about helping finance this. Maybe you can just mention how that's working. Or
Yeah, so to finance this, it's lots of layers and it's really complicated. So tax credits, we're doing what's called a seller's note, and then we also need to bring some lending opportunities. And
lending opportunities mean we got to borrow money from people.
Yep. And so
we're giving you an opportunity to lend us money.
Yes.
Okay.
The CDFI Friendly Bloomington initiatives, that is bringing resources to this opportunity, and I can't state that enough, that it's been great timing. And
good.
We are having conversations with 2 national CDFIs that offer construction lending, permanent debt, even pre-development loans, those types of things. So we're starting those conversations. There's that Bank of America $10 million pledge. You know, that's going to be great for attracting those national players to want to partner with us. And also, these CDFIs, they've had experience working with housing authorities doing rent conversions. So having that technical expertise and the sophistication to work with housing authorities, that's great for us. So we'll have more information as we kind of get into our final deal making for lending and such.
Good. We got another question, and it kind of leads into an area that we haven't talked about, which is good. Sue asked, thank you, Sue, who will be doing the rehab? Internal staff or outside contractors? And I know you think about that a lot, and you maybe want to talk about who is going to do all this rehabilitation and construction and how that gets handled.
So we have
You're answering all these questions,
She
knows she's
yeah,
all right. Well, if she says anything wrong,
we'll let her know.
Let her know. Okay.
We have a development partner, Brinshore Development, out of Northbrook, Illinois, the Chicago area, and they have a general contractor that will be.
Have they done this kind of thing before?
Yes, they've done lots
They've
of
won
different
2 president awards or governor awards for 2 of their projects that they've done.
Nice. Did you meet them by chance?
I met the senior vice president at the board meeting last.
Okay, good.
Was it last week?
Last week.
Yeah.
Okay.
The days are running together. Sorry.
So I have a flyer to share, but this work is going to be bidded on, and we are encouraging contractors, subcontractors, and vendors, particularly those that are minority or women-owned business. We are expecting $5 million worth of renovation. So
over the next 4 years, 5?
Just this first phase.
Just the first phase?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So that's over the next year, kind of, or
yeah,
give or
next
take.
couple of years. So we'll be promoting this. We have this flyer, so if you're in the trades, whether it be construction, you have a moving company, you're a general laborer, you do masonry work, landscaping, plumbing, all those types of things, please let us know that you're interested in bidding on this work. Contact our office, let us know what your business is all about, who to contact, and so when we have plans and things, scope of work to bid on, we want to reach out to those folks. So we'll be sharing this flyer on our website and post it all over town.
Great, that's a good idea. If you're looking for work, there's gonna be a lot of work up in these 312 units getting rehab.
Yeah,
nice.
We're just getting started, so there's going to be the second phase is going to be even more.
Great. And again, if anybody has questions, please send them in on Facebook Live. We're talking about the Bloomington Housing Authority and all the great work that they do to help make opportunity available. As you said, what is it? Create an opportunity not just in housing, but more than housing through the Housing Authority. And we have Sherry Clay, who is the president of the Resident Council, and Amber Skoby, who is the executive director of the Housing Authority, and William Hosea, who is the chairman of the board of the Housing Authority. And I don't know that we've to me, this is It's a big deal. I've bragged about it because I'm really proud. Again, you're the largest affordable housing provider in the city and the county as a single entity, I think, and you're wrestling and have decided to take this big leap to move forward and accelerate the rehabilitation of 300 units. And I think maybe you could talk a little bit too. Your strategic plan is thinking about not just being the traditional housing authority operator, but being more of a partner in other ways with housing affordability and development even too, right? Is that right?
A partner, a property manager, being more resourceful and bringing new housing online. Because with RAD, what RAD does is really just take off the chains. And we can be very innovative and very creative in how we provide affordable housing. Especially with financing.
Whereas you used to have just one channel of money from the federal government. It may come in different flavors, but it was basically one provider of funding, and you're now going to be able to kind of open your doors for other partners and do another thing. You better get ready, Sharon.
I'm ready. I'm excited. So are a lot of the residents. So
Great.
we've kind of got an idea in mind that once it's all done, the whole neighborhood has been rehabbed.
Yeah,
We want to have a giant block party
I like that.
to
Will you
celebrate.
invite us all?
Yep,
Like the whole
yep,
city?
Yep.
Yeah. I
Yep.
like
To
that.
celebrate the
Put that in the budget, will you?
Yeah.
Can you?
to celebrate the opening of Summit Hill. We're changing the name of our neighborhood too.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Summit Hill Community Development Corporation.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
The
Okay.
resident council came up with that name.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to thank you all. If you have closing comments, I'm going to welcome them. Now, from my perspective, you know, I feel like the Bloomington Housing Authority is kind of this amazing group of people, residents, property managers, financial people figuring this out, how to create housing for 2,500 people in our community every night, people who go to sleep in a Bloomington Housing Authority either facility itself or the program, and that's a huge thing for the city that many of us just are not aware of. And it changes lives, it helps people move forward, and this new thing that you're doing, as you said, William, kind of loosens up even more that you can do. So I'm really proud of what you're doing and want more people to know about it. And you always, I assume, welcome questions or comments, suggestions. And anyway, thank you for what you're doing. If you have any more comments you want to add, please feel free.
I think you hit it all.
Right?
Definitely.
Thank you for continued support.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always check out our website, bhaindiana.net. We have our strategic plan on there. We have a webpage devoted specifically to this RAD effort. We do, you know, a Facebook page updates, all those types of things. So
Resident
a lot of
council
good
keeps a
information.
lot of their information on there too. We
Yeah.
have a Facebook page, so if you can't find the links, we usually can connect you there. So,
Well, thank you all. Thanks for listening and watching and caring about affordable housing in Bloomington. And thanks again to Sherry Clay, President of the Resident Council, and to Amber Skoby, Executive Director of the Bloomington Housing Authority, William Hosea, Chairman of the Board, and I'm Mayor John Hamilton. Thanks very much for joining us for this Facebook Live.